weeks ago. So, welcome to the Cal State Fullerton Center for Family Business webinar. This one is Family Business Branding, Turning Research into Action. We're very fortunate to have Meghan Lynch from 6 Points here to provide us some expertise on how we can optimize our results as family businesses. Before we get started with the programming, I'd like to go into our commercials here for just a second. So thank you for bearing with us as we go through this. First, we'd like to thank our sponsors who help make this possible. Northern Trust, Commercial Bank of California, Brown and Straza, and Whitaker CPA. They are all very supportive of family businesses and do a great job in not only supporting family businesses, but also contributing to the learning for family businesses and sharing their learning with others. We have some programs coming up here shortly. Our next one is in the beginning of next month, June 3rd, Legacy and Longevity. That's going to be a great workshop that will feature two mother-daughter teams who are in the process of transitioning the leadership of their multi-generation family businesses. It'll also feature Pat Saldana, who will be providing us the latest updates from the FEUSA Family Business Survey. So that will be a great session. We hope you'll be able to join us here for that. We also have some other programs coming up. July 28th, Kim Leitzis is going to be sharing with us some case studies on de-risking the family business. So moving from sweat equity to strategic liquidity. And then we also have another program coming up here. Let's see. I think we have one more slide. On August 12th, and Christine Walker-Bowman will be sharing with us about finding your passion in family business. Christine's a fifth-generation family member and leader in her family business, and that doesn't just happen by magic. You really have to find a way to find your passion in the business. So we are we are grateful for her to share her learnings and her insight. And then I think we've got another workshop coming up in October on estate planning. Matt Brown from Brown and Straza will be sharing with us some of the latest insights in that. And then I think we've got one more, which will be governance for family business, and Deloitte will be sharing with us some of their insights and also bringing some family businesses to talk about their journey of governance. I think that covers our upcoming programs. So without, I'd also like to share that we've got some family businesses. Just looking at Kolraj's note here in the chat, you all can look at that, but we've got students that are visiting local businesses and looking forward to highlighting the family business in the community and bringing our students that are in our Family Business Dynamics course to that. So without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Meghan Lynch. Thank you so much, Meghan. If you've got questions, you can feel free to put those in the chat and we'll address those. And then if we've got some time at the end, we'll open this up for a live interaction conversation. Thank you, Meghan.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tim. Appreciate you having me.
Well, it's a pleasure.
So, I think I did okay with my slide advancing. That was my big worry. Now I've gotten over that. We can get on to the easy part. So yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. My name is Meghan Lynch. I am the CEO of 6 Point Strategy, and I am just really grateful to be with you here this morning. I've been working with generational family businesses for almost 20 years, and in the past couple of years, I've been become really like obsessed with this question. This how do generational family businesses turn fragile moments of transition into seasons of growth? And I've been looking to answer the question through my own work with clients, through research, and through events like this. So hopefully it's a question that we'll explore at least in part over this session. But one thing that really surprises me when these moments of fragility come up is that oftentimes family business leaders use really like playful metaphors when they try to describe what they're in, even though the moments are not playful or fun at all, usually. So, like, some of them, I'll hear like, oh, it's like chutes and ladders right now, like we're just kind of ticking along and then all of a sudden, shoop, the floor drops out from under us. Or my favorite one is Jenga, right? Because it's like such, and I've actually started referring to these fragile moments as Jenga moments because family businesses know that they need to grow. They need to keep kind of like stacking those blocks on the top, but you just never know. And the challenge is to figure out like, how do you not pull out that one block that sends the whole tower tumbling down? And so today, we're going to talk about one particular kind of Jenga moment question today. But if the idea of Jenga moments resonates with you, I'll share a resource at the end that addresses some other kind of Jenga moments that family businesses experience and what they do to survive them. So just a resource and the culmination of a lot of like work and um, just inquiry into this fundamental question. So, the focus today is this question: is our familyness an asset or a liability, right? As part of our brand. In my experience, this question is not usually asked when everything's fine. It's usually asked during some kind of moment of fragility, right? Like during a succession, a next gen comes in and starts to kind of poke around and ask her this question, or customer behavior changes, or a big competitor comes in and you start to reassess. And I think that this is a really big question because it's really about our very identity as a family owned business. Does it help us or does it hurt us? Does it enable growth and stability or does it undermine it? And so I do think that it's helpful to look at the research and kind of get out of the fearful state that we might get into in these moments, and start to look at the numbers. So I know that Jenny from, I think I saw her on the in the chat there. So Jenny, feel free to poke in if I get anything wrong. But she presented the stat to many of you a week or so ago. But if you missed the event or just want the refresher, um, in this stat, familyness looks like an asset, right? Like 70% of people say that family businesses are the most trustworthy and transparent. Trust is a huge asset. But let's look a little bit deeper at what familyness can mean beyond just pure trust. Mackenzie did a deep dive into not only the traits associated with family businesses, but actually broke it down between people who had worked within a family business and people who had never worked in a family business. And you can see from the data that the traits that they associate with them start to differ pretty much right away. You can see where the gaps show up. People who have worked in a family business rate them higher in every category for traits like innovation and the highest quality products and services. So to me, the real question under all of this isn't really like, is our familyness an asset or a liability? But it's probably something more like this: are we being seen for what we actually are? And more specifically, are we making the right things visible or just the easiest and most obvious things? I want to show you what this looks like in practice and what happens when a family business is forced to answer this question under pressure. This is Sweetgrass Dairy. It's a second generation creamery that produces artisan cheese and one of the first and largest cheesemakers in Georgia. They're also fourth generation dairy farmers. Desiree on the left there started making cheese to showcase the high quality milk that they were getting from their herds. And the cheese that she produced built up a really loyal regional following. There was nothing like it in the area, nothing like it on the market. Her daughter Jessica and Jessica's husband Jeremy eventually took over from her mom, and they brought some business acumen and culinary training to the business to help it grow. They took the brand from a small regional brand to a national brand, and they built a production facility to help them scale. Then, somewhere along the way, they hit a supply chain reality. They couldn't source exclusively from their closely controlled family herds anymore and still maintain the volume that national distribution required. The stakes were that the long-term buyer relationships that they had were built on a really specific claim: grass-fed milk from barn-free cows. And that was about to change. But even before the supply chain issue, Sweetgrass had been really hesitant to lean into this family-owned piece, this family-owned positioning. At one point along the way, a specific buyer that they trusted had questioned whether they were big enough to fill orders. And that's it. It was just one conversation, but it became the lens that they interpreted every signal about their brand. So that one person questioned it, and then they were like, oh my gosh, people think we're small. We can't say this. We can't do this. And this was primarily because Jessica and Jeremy really put a lot of weight in their buyer relationships. They know that their customers have also staked some of their own credibility alongside the brand, and that they're taking a chance on cheeses from Georgia. They wanted to ensure that their buyers felt confident in their reputation. So as soon as one questions their size, they start asking the question, will being family owned make us look small? Because they're faced with having to change this core proof point about their brand, Sweetgrass really had to answer a harder question. What were buyers and customers actually trusting them for? What was load bearing in their Jenga tower, and what was just incidental? The investigation that they went through, competitive landscape review, customer interviews, trend data, all revealed that barn-free cows on family land was also evidence of something deeper. Their decisions made by people with skin in the game, and who are independent of conglomerate pressure and have a strong commitment to quality and craft. They were able to shift the question from will we look small if we say we're family owned to what does being family owned actually prove about us? What does it signal to our customers? That's when Sweetgrass uncovered the through line that they could stand behind during the supply chain shift. Second generation, independent, award winning cheesemaker of the American South. Family owned, which was the identity that they had been avoiding, turned out to be the most precise and durable way to say what had always been true. They communicated very transparently with buyers. Here's what's changed, here's what didn't, and here's why the thing that you are actually trusting us for is still here. This was a Jenga moment for Sweetgrass Dairy. They had relationships, reputation, and a huge investment in scaling at stake. And it felt like the supply chain changed could send the tower tumbling. So one of the reasons that they came to us for help with the pivot was that we had already done their original brand expansion work. And so we deeply understood which of these Jenga pieces was load bearing in their business. Their big fear was starting over with somebody who didn't know them so well and then accidentally move one of these pieces and then have everything drop. But they survived. They survived the change. Those buyers' relationships and the trust that they'd earned stayed intact. And they didn't lose a single customer during their transition. And they've continued to grow. Their strong foundation held. It wasn't just about managing a crisis, it was about really setting a tone for their next phase of growth. One of the other questions that they were asking along the way, and one that I hear a lot from family owned businesses, is this one. Do our customers actually care that we're family owned? And it's a great question. And I would argue that there isn't one clear answer to it. I know for one industrial manufacturer, I was kind of pushing on this question because they were at a size and scale and in an industry where I was having a hard time believing that their customers did care that they were family owned. But the third generation owner pushed back on me, and she really said that like our whole industry is conglomerates, Megan. There aren't any family owned businesses left. It turned out that their niche was dominated by a couple of huge players that had just been swallowing up all the smaller family owned brands. So that a lot of their customers really did care when the ownership went out and Katie was talking to them about like, what do you care about? What are you looking for? Why do you choose us? What came back was, look, you don't have the red tape of the conglomerates. I know the person who handles my account. I can talk with the ownership to make a decision about what we're doing. That access and that high touch customer service was synonymous to family owned, and it was something that they weren't finding in the big conglomerates. So I think it's a great example of why it's really important to reframe this question so that it's not so much why does anyone care whether we're family owned, and instead is more precise. Is family owned actually different in our industry? And is it different in a way that's compelling? Is it different in a way that matters to our customers or our employees or other stakeholders? I want to share the next few slides because I think that they're helpful to understand why this reframe is important. Now, brand differentiation is critical regardless of whether or not you're family owned. This chart shows brand strategy and positioning over there on the y-axis going up, and then operational excellence going across the bottom on the x-axis. And most family-owned companies that I know are like smack dab in the doer box, right? Like it's like head down, do the work, be excellent, but don't brag. Let our work speak for itself. It's all of their values at work that are some version of humbleness and work ethic and passion for craft and excellence. And you would think that this would be the way to be, right? Like it seems sort of self-evident when you think about it. Like who would want to be, if you had to choose between being differentiated, being different, and being good, you would pick like being good, right? Like it's better to be good than different. And who wants to be different for different's sake? I think that that's really great when everything's fine in the business and everything's fine in the market. But as the family gets bigger and the company needs to grow, it turns out that being good is not the best way to grow. This is a chart of compound growth rates, and you can see that our little hopefuls who aren't either different or very good at what they do are there at the end. They're still growing a little bit, sneaking by. Um, but you can see that the doers, so the people who, the companies that are really excellent operationally, aren't really growing much faster than the hopefuls. But the visionaries, who are different but not particularly good, are growing more than double of what the hopefuls are. But you can see on the far end that the real magic is when you combine the two, when you're different and good. Then you get that growth rate spike. And this is what the manufacturer found. They were already good at what they did. And so when consolidation occurred in their industry, and all of a sudden they started messaging about the one thing that none of their competitors could copy, their family owned status, all of a sudden they saw that growth spurt. But being family owned isn't always compellingly different. One of the other questions that I heard came up in the last session was one around like what happens if we're judged on platforms that like we don't control, or we're judged on different criteria than simply being family business. And this happens all the time. So there's a family farm that is talking with, and they had grown really significantly through agritourism and retail. They were in a space like agriculture where being family owned is actually like more normal than not normal. And one thing that their brand manager said really stuck with me. He said, I don't know if it matters that we're family owned anymore. We're too big, and all of our customers are judging us on based on their our customers aren't judging us based on their experience with a farm stand down the road. Instead, they're comparing us to big national brands. They're judging us as a retailer, or they're judging us as a tourist destination. And he said, we just don't get the grace anymore. We just don't get the grace. And I really love that. I think it like captures that frustration when you are being judged on things that you don't control, or you're being judged in a competitive set that you don't necessarily relate to. And it just feels like people aren't seeing you for what you are. But I think that what Kyle was really getting at wasn't so much how we're being judged, but he was really starting to uncover, what do our customers value? And he was seeing that they valued things like a seamless checkout experience in the retail store, and a vacation activity that was comfortable and fun for the family and memorable, and that would actually earn the right to take a customer's time and money over like a Six Flags theme park. Like that was the choice that their customers were making. And so he had to ask, what do our customers really value? We saw Sweetgrass ask that same question, and Katie asked that same question. And one of the things that I think is most important to keep in mind is that asking that question does not mean that you have to jump on trends, right? Or be something that you're not. It really requires excavation, not invention. You need to be questioning assumptions and talking with your customers. You need to know what they're valuing today, not what they liked a decade ago or valued about you a decade ago. You need to know what their options are. Like, what is the competitive set that they're looking at? How are they making decisions? And then you need to look really hard at what is already true about your family business and understand how you align to what your current customers value. If you don't align, so you look at it and you're like, oh, what they value is not who we are, then you may need to look for a customer that does value what you have to offer. because reinventing yourself is not only super costly, and it's also just not going to be very effective. Like if we think back to that chart, it's going to probably make you a less different, less good hopeful that's just barely staying alive. Instead, we want to capitalize on the doer in you. So what do you already do well? What are you excellent at? What can you do better than anyone else? And what makes you different? And if you can honestly answer whether those things are valuable to your current customers, that can help. But if you also decide, oh, it's actually not aligned to what our current customers need, then it can tell you whether you need to start planning for customer succession, right? Like you plan for leadership succession. You can start thinking about who are the customers who do need what we do? Where are they hanging out? They might be in a different industry. They might be a different age or demographic bracket, but there's probably somebody out there who does need what you're excellent at. And you need to be finding them and thinking about that customer succession plan, what that looks like, thinking about into the future. So we come back to that question, right? Is using family business as part of your brand messaging an asset or is it a liability? And you simply don't know. Like, there's just no way to answer this question until you answer three others. And these are the three questions that we looked at. So, what does being family owned prove about us? And so the way Sweetgrass Dairy answered this question was to uncover what family owned meant to them first, right? Like, what does it mean to us to be family owned? Why is it important to us? What does our family do uniquely well? How do our values play out when we're running the business? And how does this compare to what else is in the market? Starting with what does family own mean to us internally? And then you start to answer the question externally. You talk to your customers. And for Sweetgrass, they wanted to know why their best customers stuck with them and believed in them. And then the easiest way to really dig down and see if there's alignment is to start asking, like the Toyota 5 whys, like just keep asking why. So if they say like, oh, your commitment to barn-free cows, well, why is that important to you? Well, it shows that you have a sustainable mindset. Okay. It shows that your values play out. Okay. And then you start to get down to, oh, okay, this actually is starting to align with our list of family owned. And then the next question is family owned compellingly different? And so there you have to look at your competitive landscape. So do that scan like Katie did. So who are you up against in RFPs? Who are you competing against? Who shows up at the same events or trade shows as you do? Who are your customers choosing between? Is it a bunch of other family-owned companies or is it something else? If every alternative is a conglomerate or private equity, then independence becomes a differentiator. If every alternative is also a generational family-owned company, then you've got to go one level deeper. The third question is, what do our customers value? And I would add here, like, what do they value today, right? Because the key is not what did they value when you started or what did they used to value. It's what do they value right now? And Kyle's mistake was that he didn't ask this question until his customers were already judging him on different criteria. He didn't get ahead of it. What you want to do is make sure that you're asking that question early so that you don't get pulled into what your current customers are looking for, even if it's not part of your core. Because it's easy when your customers start to value something else that you start to kind of migrate and try to fulfill that need. But if it doesn't align with who you are and what you do well, you may be better off saying like, great, you go get that somewhere else. We're going to find somebody who does value what we do.
Hey, Megan,
Yeah.
these are great questions. And I don't know if you'll go into this later or not, but how do you go about asking these? Is this something that you just call up the customers you're familiar with and ask them, or how do you go about asking the questions or getting the answers to the questions?
Yeah, for sure. That's such a good question. So there's kind of like multiple levels that you can do it on. So I always say like don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? Because you can definitely just pick up the phone and have conversations with your best customers. And what we usually find is even if you call a dozen customers, you're going to start seeing patterns in what they say. So you don't have to be talking to hundreds of people or do big surveys. Um, a few deep, thoughtful conversations are going to start to yield patterns. But we've also seen family businesses really build customer listening as almost like a superpower and a system within their company. So sometimes it's like what people do really naturally, but sometimes a system can really help support it. So really help figure out like, okay, how do we build customer listening regularly into what we do, whether usually through a mix of surveys and interviews, and then how do we like bring those insights and bring them back to the team so that we actually turn them into action as opposed to just have conversations and then they go nowhere. So for that, you really want like a McKinsey or somebody to be working with you on kind of like fine tune, both gathering the insights that you need, but then also helping your company turn them into insight and action.
So it sounds like it's kind of a scale. So if you have a few customers, then it's easier to make personal outreach. But if you're a larger brand, you need somebody like Katie and Jenny to help out. I don't know if Katie or Jenny, you want to jump it in there at all.
Oh, well, thank you. Jenny and I are tag team because I hear her jumping on a call here in a second. But I think that it all, exactly what you're saying. I think too, we could definitely always help, or anybody can help be able to also think about the questions that you're going to ask, even to that small group of clients and customers that you have, just to make sure that they're thoughtful and being able to tie it back to what your objectives are. But yes, then there are ways to be able to do larger research studies depending on how many customers and clients that you have. But I do think the biggest thing is challenging our own assumptions and really being able to find out from the people who are closest to us in terms of the customer base, like what it is that matters most to them.
Yeah.
Great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And I think that like it's not always like if you're bigger, you have to do a bigger study. Sometimes it's like asking the right questions to a targeted group of people just yields tremendous results and it doesn't have to be a huge thing.
Mm-mm.
And I think the other big thing is like if you're not doing it at all, doing something like just having conversations, even if you don't quite know what you're doing and you're sort of fumbling through it, is still better than not asking questions. And so I think that that's what I would like really encourage people to do is just like start small, like pick up the phone to the customer that you're most comfortable with and that you could most easily ask some questions and just start and hear like and just be curious and listen for something that you weren't expecting. Because I think as soon as you get that one insight or aha moment, it starts to make you hungry for like, ooh, I see the power of this and what it can yield.
Thank you.
um and so yeah, so I think that the biggest thing here is like when you're really trying to uncover what your customers value, it's really making sure that you don't have that tunnel vision and that you're not making assumptions based on what they used to do or used to care about or used to be value for us, because it can be really hard, especially when it feels personal, like you know customers change, people change, and sometimes it is the like it's not you, it's me, it's they've evolved, and you don't necessarily need to evolve with them. Sometimes it's like stay, if you have something that you are particularly good at, sometimes it's about finding somebody else who has that problem, or has that like job that needs to be done. And I think of there was a study that McDonald's did on their milkshakes, and they were trying to like increase the number of people who were drinking their milkshakes. And they realized that somebody who had like the job that the milkshakes did were commuters sitting in traffic. Like they had a really long, boring commute. They needed something to make it more like fun and interesting. And so, as opposed to like having a banana or a bagel or whatever, they would stop at McDonald's and grab a milkshake. And when they uncovered that they thought that their target customer were like families and kids, and when they realized it was commuters was this other like kind of untapped market segment, they realized like, oh, we could get even better at this. Like we could make them thicker so that they last longer. We could put in fruit so they don't feel so bad having a milkshake for their breakfast. And so it ended up being like a source of innovation and new ideas for them, and help them like build up a new customer base that they wouldn't have normally tapped into for that product. And so I think just remembering that like, just because something changes in the market doesn't mean that there's not opportunity. It just means that you have to maybe be a little bit more creative about finding that opportunity and just aligning yourself with it. Um, so this, and I think like all of that to me is this like excavation, not invention. Like there's this piece of like, you don't have to invent new ways to be or invent new customers. You really just kind of have to go back to your core and really understand, who are we? What are we great at? Why are we different? And then who needs what we do, and just getting those things aligned. And I see a lot of family businesses make the mistake of, oh, we have to be new, we have to be innovative, we have to do something that's like way out of our comfort zone. And sometimes you can do that, but it should still be like related to something that you're good at. It should be like innovation that comes out of strength, not innovation that comes out of panic. And so to me, this kind of like excavation piece, that there's a piece of like, yes, go out and listen to your customers, but also let's have conversations internally about, what are we good at? What lights us up? What are our best customers, the best problems that we solve, the things that are most profitable for us, and how do we focus and amplify those, as opposed to spreading ourselves thin and going into areas that don't match what we do. um so yeah, just curious if people have questions, if this idea of these Jenga moments resonates, if you've seen that in your own business. And definitely feel free to like drop questions in the chat if you wonder like, how does this whole family business, like,
Or,
great for these companies, but how does it apply to me?
or unmute and just ask them.
Or yeah, exactly. We've got
We've got a manageable size of participants here.
while people are thinking of questions, this is the email series that I had promised in the beginning of, just these 6 practices of family businesses that endure these fragile moments, and what we've seen is the patterns that work. So these are the things that are just like what I wish every, oop, how do I get back? I don't know.
So, so
Every family business knew about and had.
my one of my takeaways here is understand who you are, and then find customers that value that, as opposed to finding the customer you want and then twisting yourself into knots into becoming what they want.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that particularly like that's particularly difficult to do when we do see like macro trends changing. Like it makes us want to evolve and chase a trend. Like again, like just thinking of brands that everybody knows. Like you think about Lego. um, when all the kids, family owned business, um, when kids started doing more electronics and they saw sales drop and they had their first unprofitable year, they were like, oh my gosh, we've got to, change what we're doing. So they started, doing more electronic toys, and they did theme parks, and they got like way into other things. And the further they got from the core, the worse they did, like the worse the business performed. And then finally, it took a non-family CEO to say, like, to do that excavation work and be like, hey, what are we really about? What are we really good at? We have this brick and we are great at it. And so let's go back to that. And they started running any innovation that they brought. They, like, he had two criteria. One was that it had to be really clearly Lego. Like, you had to have no doubt that this was like a Lego made project. And then two, it had to be something that people had never seen before. And so he had kind of like those two guardrails that were still creating innovation, but we're keeping them like in their core. And I think that that's really like the secret there, is to kind of like, what is our brick? What are we really great at, and what do we need to stick to?
Now, sometimes that's really challenging when a trend goes counter to who you are. I used to work for a rice company, and when the Atkins diet came out, no carbs, and what we were selling was brown rice, it was like, oh my gosh, are we going to survive? But um, after the panic faded, we realized no, people still need good carbs, and not everybody's going to be on an Atkins diet, even though that's the fad of the moment.
Yeah.
And we actually grew through that by, staying true to who we were. But it was pretty sobering.
Yeah, I think it's one of those like those kinds of like moments when something shifts in the market, like that's what can make that panic happen of like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be growing rice. Maybe we need to grow other things. And then all of a sudden you're like way far from where you started and not doing it well. And it's a mess.
I think too, I'll just add on
Yeah.
that point, I do think that there is the sense and that reminder that especially even like today, everything is so fast and it's just coming at us, that really that value of being able to slow down and remember that we're looking to be generational businesses and families and what we're doing. And so actually like we don't have to, it's slowing down to think about for the multi generations out there. How can we be great ancestors and like stewards of our business going forward? And that slowing down so that then we can actually say, look at it like stepping back a minute and looking at whatever that trend is to say what else could be true. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. And Tim, like what you just said, is not every single person's going to be on the Atkins diet. But when you're so like in it and like super close to it, it can feel like everybody is because that's all you're hearing and that confirmation bias thing, and that it actually can be stepping back. And even if everyone is doing something, it's then that challenge to pause for ourselves to actually say, but how can we still show up at our core values and our core impact and change, and how can it maybe be told through a different lens of storytelling, which is the great work that Meghan does, and being able to actually like tell different ways that we are still relevant in this. And so I think that impulse and that reactive way of being right now is what we're all feeling just in society in general. And that I really feel that business leaders in general, and then for family businesses, if we remember that we're not looking for the short term, we're looking for longevity and looking for that thing that the value of that slowing down and looking at things through different lenses is really where we're going to be able to find the opportunities of how we're going to be able to navigate whatever is coming at us.
Uh,
Yeah, for sure.
and
And
the,
I think and not looking for, like thinking about that differentiate, like to me that differentiation graph is so powerful, because it's like, oh right, like the power of being different and not jumping on the trends. Like there's always going to be the people who aren't on the Atkins diet, and all of a sudden if everybody's going Atkins, then you miss the opportunity to be the non-Atkins company. And so not underestimating the importance of being different and almost going counter to trends when it makes sense, and you're very aligned with it, to just have confidence that like you're going to find your people and you're going to be like their choice. And I think that that's just really important to be thinking about, especially if you're looking for like another little um, hit of fast growth being different and being good, or like combining
Well,
those is definitely the
uh,
best way to do it.
I look at some of the businesses of the folks who are on the call right now. I can think about Alicia, and I'm sure that with ICE's case management, I would imagine she's getting a lot of pushback. Of, well, why can't AI just do our case management? And which would be a challenge. And I'm sure she's looking at ways to how do you incorporate it. But with being a multi-generation family business, talk about the test of time. And here are the things that do make us different than just turning over case management to AI. I don't
Yeah,
know, Alicia,
exactly.
if you want to say anything about that. I see your comment here.
Yeah, I would just say 1,000% that it's definitely hard, but what everybody is saying, I relate to. I think just like leaning into who you are and like what's special. We just had a meeting where I talked a lot about like the inertia and the momentum around us and how a lot of our cohorts are leaning into like artificial things. And we want to do a little bit of that, but we also want to like double down on what makes us special and like the human aspects of case management and not like averaging down our services or watering them down to the common denominator and keeping that like excellence and white glove service in mind, which has to be tied to a human. The other thing I was going to add, just based on some of what those three questions you had earlier on the screen, which I thought were really helpful and resonated a lot, is like in our business, like in our industry, there's so much mergers and acquisitions and there's so much private equity. Like we're getting requests daily. People want to buy or they want to partner, et cetera. And so like remaining family owned is becoming really, really unique in our space. So we're talking about it more than we ever did before. And it allows us to really differentiate ourselves from those players that have a really different motivation and background, and why they're in the business is just so different than why we're here. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And you see that in lots of industries right now. It's like, that influx of private equity or a couple big conglomerates that are like buying everybody up. And all of a sudden now this thing that like used to not be so valuable, the like familyness, is all of a sudden like the one thing that all those competitors can't claim. So it's like it's such an easy way to say like, yes, actually this is valuable to us and we are going to stand behind it. And so I think
Right. And I feel
recognizing
like
those
that McKinsey study is going to show people more and more trust them because it's going to be less and less common. It's going to be
right.
more and more unusual.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be more different, more valuable.
Mhm.
And and I think as it does become more rare, then it allows you to like tell that story even more strongly. And again, like tie it with the pain points that people have when they're dealing with private equity that's like changing over employees, and we've got people who stay for decades, and like those kinds of things. Then you can almost like make family owned be shorthand for all the things that they hate about the the competitor, right?
But I think when more good ones, like all of us on this call and members of our center, is to be able to then say, like, yeah, it can be messy. I mean, I always say, like, listen, we all got family, all got business. We're just the overachievers who like put it all into like one building. But we can admit that it can be kind of messy, a family business, and we can own parts of those stories, but then we own the parts, like you're saying, that is what differentiates us from private equity, that we care about employees differently. We care about generational success over things than like short-term profits and like getting, money into the shareholders. There's so much narrative out there,
We care
but
about the community in a way they don't care.
there's so much opportunity for us to be like owning it and to be talking about the difference. Even, I mean, like I was watching Marshalls last night. That's the spinoff of Yellow. Yellowstone. Like all the stories like that makes great TV is like bad family business dynamics that are out there. But we should like own the family business stories that come out of the Hallmark Channel. Like, have you guys ever noticed that like Hallmark Channel always has family businesses and they're also happy and it ends in like a love story? Let's like own the Hallmark Channel's like story of family business and talk about how amazing it is instead of letting these loud narratives of Succession and Yellowstone and all those things. You know, like I watch them because they're just like, you know, it fills that different part of you. But there's so much for us to own. And that's the thing that like Megan's talks about here is that, and we also don't have to talk about everything, but there's so much opportunity right now that people are craving what we bring to the table. We just have to get louder and louder and feel confident about putting it out there of like what makes us so special and like what we're doing to be different about thinking about long-term success for our communities, for humanity, for all of those different kinds of things, because we like are so primed to like thrive in this time of what's happening in the world around us. Sorry, Tim, I get on my like soapbox of like, yay, family business.
Go
No,
for it, Katie.
yeah, 100%. And I think particularly when you can like connect the dots with things that people are feeling or caring about in this moment, then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, no brainer. Of course, why wouldn't I do business with a family-owned company? Um, but you
So
do have to do that work, both of like really understanding what it means to you and then really understanding what it means to your customer and what they care about. And then when you connect those things, it's so powerful. So
wonder if anyone else on the line, I'm looking at like Krishna and Sean and Tim are at the top of my screen at the moment. If you have any examples of kind of how you're differentiating in your businesses, your the family angle.
I can take a stab at that. In our company, we're a spice and seasoning manufacturer. Historically, a lot of spice companies do start as family owned because of just the nature of the product. And so we really try to focus on highlighting the longevity of the business, how it started 3 generations ago, and how it sort of transformed and kind of evolved over the years into the company that we are today. So trying to find a way to tell that story about highlighting the modernization of it.
do you still find that the majority are still family owned, or are you seeing more like consolidation or like
We're
conglomerate owned
Yeah,
pretenders?
I'm seeing some consolidation, so it'll be interesting, like how do we, evolve that story? But at the same time, like I think that this, like what you were highlighting is so salient because as we see more consolidation, we see more like larger companies acquiring some of these smaller manufacturers, like this allows us to be like a differentiator. So just finding a way to be able to bridge that story of like, well, we're still family owned, but we can still keep up and compete with some of the larger organizations.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that like the Sweetgrass story is like a good parallel to it of like the like what they ended up finding out was that generate particularly when they brought in the generational piece of it, that started to mean, as you were saying, kind of like stability and scale and things. Like they were worried that it was going to make them look small, but instead made them look stable. Um and I think that was huge in an industry that had a lot of like turnover and small producers, going away and things like that. So, um, yeah.
I would add to that in the last, I would say 2 years, we spent a lot of time trying to come up with like just our company brand identity. It was always sort of like not that important. We were just so focused on having great product, great service, but actually having a consistent brand identity, like our logo, our styling, our marketing materials, all having that sort of professional thread while keeping some of the elements of our company history, like that's been a bigger focus for us, like trying to tell that story more clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy when you can combine the two together of like, you still have the excellence and the passion for what you do, but also, making it really stand out and be consistent and have a clear point of view. It's like, yeah, the two together are super powerful. Awesome.
Hi, Tim. To answer your question, for us, we have a large swath of customers that are also family-owned businesses. So for us being a family-owned business, being able to handshake partner with our customers, not in 70,000 pages of legal documents, but by sitting down, talking with one another, and truly supporting each other's businesses, that has been very, very helpful to our company.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. The like family business ecosystem. It's like it positions you as like aligning with them and their values. And
Right.
again, it's like figuring once you know what matters to your customer, then it makes it a no-brainer. Like it almost answers the question for you about should we lean into this. Um, I see like Sean's question. I would like answer it the same way of like if if it's becoming more rare. And so the question is, would it be beneficial to add text to our business cards that mention that our company is a family business? A lot of our competitors are larger companies in our local area in multifamily, self-storage, and industrial. So I'd say like if it's becoming more rare and if it points to something, if you can kind of again ask that question of like, what does it prove about us? What do we try like just being family owned on its own that's not shorthand for some of these bigger things like commitment to community or longevity of employees or customer service or things like that. If it's just family owned, then it's not quite as powerful as if you can kind of connect it to something that your customers care about. So I think that would be my only like yes and to that of like, yeah, sure, definitely put it at the bottom of your business cards, proudly put it on the top of your business card. Yeah, as Katie said, like be loud and proud about it, but also figure out what are we really trying to communicate? Like what is different from our competitors that our familyness is really trying to communicate? And I think if you can answer that question really succinctly, then it makes that even more powerful because it becomes shorthand to something that's like truly unique about you.
So in Sean's case, one of the things they do are multifamily housing, and so maybe what they're trying to create is a family sense in your community.
Yeah.
Some family community brought to you by families.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I see like
something
a
like that.
yeah, I see a lot of like people who are involved in multifamily construction or like community development and things like that, that becomes the piece is like, hey, you don't want somebody from out of the area who has no ties, who's not thinking long term doing this. You want somebody who's got skin in the game, who cares about the community. Like that's what makes us different and that's what makes us a good partner. And it's what the other people can't claim and can't do.
Well, thank you so much, Megan. I appreciate it. Thank you all for
Yeah,
joining us
thanks for having
today.
me.
And we'll be sending out the slides. Annie will be sending out the slides